Welcome back to part 2 of FORGECAST, episode 2. If you haven't seen part 1, just like last week, you can find that over on my partner in crimes channel, the Ecclesiarch. Head over there now. Come on right back after you have listened to part 1. We were just discussing some of the decks that we've been playing, what we've been experiencing on our journey, and some of the creative builds, and we just started to get into a little bit about what we want to see and what we think the roadmap, the WARPFORGE early access roadmap entails. And we were left on a bit of a cliffhanger because some naughty boy has been digging into, I think, the code and the files, and is about to reveal some huge spoilers. So if you don't want to hear those, then turn away now. So, welcome back, Ecclesiarch. So, we were just saying that we think it's Tau, right? In the next, are going to be the new
Yes, we were.
faction.
Yes, we were.
But you seem to have an extra layer of confidence.
Yes, I do. So, gentlemen, I'm not saying that this is guaranteed because I'm gonna give a little throwback to Horus Heresy Legions. Like in Horus Heresy Legions, when I was digging, I found some Emperor voice lines, like interactions with the Emperor, but that was like a year ago at least, and there's still no Big E. But maybe he's coming one day. But in any case, like, even though I thought that the Emperor was guaranteed very soon, it didn't show up. But I think this time it's a little bit different, and I think it kind of shows a couple of things. So basically, what I found were some unique voice lines for Oricon the Diviner. There were 3 unique voice lines that have not yet been used in the game. Number 1 was, I believe, his voice line towards the Tau, where he kind of makes a sarcastic remark about their empire. The second one was his remark towards Cadia, specifically, not Imperial Guard, but Cadia. And number 3 was his unique interaction with Trazyn the Infinite. So I think that's like a spoiler for 3 different things. Not only are we getting these 3 factions, one of those is going to be a different Necron faction. Because we know that Trazyn is not from the Saltec dynasty, right? So I think that kind of, that kind of shows that there's some very interesting stuff coming. So yeah, we do definitely have a reason to think that Tau and Imperial Guard are going to be some of the first things that drop. I think that Trazyn is maybe later down the line. It's just that Imhotep and Trazyn, like Infinite and the Divine, like, the whole shtick. So maybe they made that like in advance. But I do think that Tau are probably going to be one of the first factions. Probably because there's I don't know. I'm not really sure about the statistics there, but I think there's more of a demand for Tau, I guess, than some other factions. So
I can't wait to see what they do. I think you're right about Cadia as well, because looking at the artwork on the roadmap, it is the Imperial Guard are in Cadia colors, so
yes.
that looks about right. Yeah, I tell you, one of my worries from a mechanical point of view with Tau is, so if you play 40k, the Tau, from a gameplay perspective, they have some of the best, obviously, guns in the game. And they absolutely suck at melee, hand-to-hand combat, and that's reflected in their weapon skill. And one of the things I worry about is kind of like units having
Very
1
low
for
mid.
melee attack, and then 5 to 6 or something. And in this game, in this particular game, and in the CCG, we know that's a, if we look at cards that already exist like that, like what's the orc drop called? The guy who gives you the talent, he's like is he a 6 drop or 5 drop? And he's got like 6 health for 5 energy, but he's only got like 1 or 2. And anyway, it's easy to play around those cards, and it's one of my worries with the Tau.
I'll tell you something, and maybe it will ease your worries. In Horus Heresy Legions, we had a mechanic on a couple of units. There was like the Iron Havoc squad, particularly for Iron Warriors. So you would drop this colossus of a unit, and its ability was whenever the enemy unit attacks, including the Warlord, deal 3 damage to it. And that kind of screams Overwatch for me. So most probably Tau are going to have their Overwatch mechanic. Even though I'm not sure, was Overwatch removed or nerfed in the tabletop? I'm not too sure.
Well, I haven't played the most recent version, so I don't know.
But I do think that's going to be the thing.
Yeah, it was actually a new thing that was introduced around 2009, I think it came in. And it wasn't in before. But it was a game-wide thing. It wasn't a faction-specific thing. So,
But I mean,
But
as I knew, like Tau had, like, I think, one of the most potent Overwatch, as I know.
mm,
Maybe I'm getting this wrong. I don't know, but my guess is that if they have low melee attack, they'll probably be compensated for it by having Overwatch fire. Like, and maybe it's gonna be like just like Shuriken Overwatch 1, Overwatch 2, or maybe they'll just deal their ranged attack to whatever attacks. It's also possible. Or
mm,
maybe what's gonna be there is if you attack it and you do not take it out in one shot, like if it survives, then it does Overwatch, or maybe it
mm.
does Overwatch even if you take it out. But they have to be very careful about that. That can get out of hand too. So they need to be very careful. Either
Oh man,
like
I can't
it's gonna
wait.
be crazy. For Cadia, I'm not sure what they're gonna be doing, but most probably since it's the Imperial Guard still, they're. You know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for a commissar, like being able to execute his own units to increase the
Mhm.
morale of other units. That would be so cool.
I just can't wait to see. Like one of the things I like about the Orcs faction is I think that there are multiple themes within it. It's something that I think is poor about Chaos. I think Chaos right now, they've got the Pact thing, the Chaos Pact thing, and not a lot outside of that. And I'd really love to see, you just think with a Tau like the drones, a drone deck, a drone build,
Mm-hmm.
which I hope is better than the Tyranid spores because the spores don't quite work for me. But some sort of drone synergies, and then you've obviously got like an all kind of crisis suit type of battle suit kind of builds, and then obviously the crew hordes and the oh man, I'm so excited! Like a fire warrior, like some sort of fire warrior cadet, because it's all like some sort of cadet thing, like what happens if you've got three fire warriors on board versus just one, and all that sort of stuff. I think there's a lot of potential. Very, very exciting. But anyway,
I
to
want to
re
see a squig. Give us snake bites and give us the squiggoth.
well, are they going to do that? That's the other thing, isn't it? Is that when they release the new faction, will each of the existing factions just get a small handful of new cards? I really hope they
Could be.
do.
Could be.
Otherwise, we're just going to have everybody playing Tower, and it's going to be really boring.
That's why I think I don't know, like I may be wrong, honestly. There's a lot of people thinking that there's gonna be three factions dropping, as you said, BJ. And I will just say the culprit there is like Horus Heresy Legions, which usually release three factions per expansion, but you know how it happened? It just didn't increase like it didn't release like right away. It was like over 3 weeks. For example,
Yeah.
it was actually over 4 weeks. So first week was, for example, let's say for a Prospero expansion, let's say, for example, first week would be like Space Wolves, for example. Second week, like maybe Thousand Suns. Third week would be Custodes, and the last week was Neutrals. So maybe what they'll do is like first week you get like Tau, then you get the Cadia, then you get Grey Knights, and the last week maybe you get new cards for factions, or maybe you get like sub factions or something. Who knows? Maybe, or maybe they're just trying to drop the Tau. Honestly speaking, I would much prefer they release one faction and fine tune it than like just drop a lot of this balanced stuff. But at the same time, I'm kind of am worried about the fact that the game lacks content right now, and there's not a lot of
Mm.
people. The player base is dropping, obviously. So the thing is, like, I think more content is crucial, but they gotta be really careful. Once again, that's the reason why I think that the player test environment would be so good, because even if you would drop three factions, like people would tell you some ridiculous stuff to just not release, right? So, for example,
Mm.
the frigging glaive tank for the Alpha Legion dealing 20 damage from it, but like there would be some things that people would explain why you should not
Oh, for sure.
do. Like
They get a lot of benefit. Yeah.
sometimes they get a good thing going. Like I really loved one of the Alpha Legion's legendaries that they released. I don't remember what the hell it was called, but it was like a Terminator, I think, for 6 energy. You drop it, and the rally was both players draw cards until their hand is full. So that is pretty cool because both players draw it, right? So
Mm.
like it's like a double-edged sword because it can help you with your Exodus to like fill up your hand, but what if you're giving your opponent some crucial cards, and what if like he doesn't draw the traps that you have played in his deck, like Alpha Legion does that, they place traps in your deck. So the thing is like it was that's an interesting card. I like that. Maybe a lot of people are gonna comment now, no, it's not, but I think that's an interesting card. Like it's definitely more interesting than just dropping a tank that just wins the game. So like
Mm.
I think it's much more interesting to have a mechanic like that overall.
And that's what the game needs is more mechanics. It's very thin on the ground at the minute around that, and So back to what we were saying about chaos, like this kind of too one-dimensional. Like we need more mechanics. It needs new cards, and the game's got so much potential. I just hope to God we're not waiting too long for some of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, what is your? I don't know. I've kind of tracked some data on this, but what is your opinion on kind of like the meta right now for people who are playing ladder? What is your opinion on kind of what the meta is at the minute? Has it changed much since we last spoke?
Well, I would say Gaskell is meta, obviously. Right now, he's a little bit overtuned. Not, it's not. I wouldn't say like a little bit. He's quite a bit overtuned. Like the thing is,
Yeah,
you can deal with him. It's just that like the early game pressure that he puts up with just dropping grots is pretty nuts. I would say
yeah,
I once again I still maintain that what they should do is they should just create another unit. I'm saying call it a Gretchen. There's a Gretchen in the lore, right? It's a higher level of grot. And instead of like that 1-2 of the grot stat, like give it, let's say, 2-2-2 or something, right? So make it a little bit stronger grot. Or what they could do, but this might be a little too much. I'm just saying like options. Give the grots that Gaskell summons like a backlash. Like when they get killed, they damage Gaskell or something. I don't know. Like give him some kind of either make it possible to clear it or give it a drawback, because as it was like mentioned by, I think Mr. Midnight mentioned it a couple of times, the problem there is that every unit creator that is in the game, like someone that summons units, you can get rid of the unit in one turn, right? With Gaskell
yeah,
you cannot, because it still lives the grot there, so it becomes a
yeah,
bit of a nuisance, especially considering Makari is a thing, right? So yeah,
yeah.
Gaskell is definitely, I think, on top, and the other contender is the Scarab. Now, I have had some mixed comments on my last video. So basically, when I played with the Kalgar, my first matchup was the Scarab. I did win, but during the match, I commented on how uninteractive and stupid I think the Scarab decks are in general, and how unfun for me is to. I don't even understand how someone can find it fun. But a lot of people said like that. For example, I think the Tyranids are more uninteractive. Like I think Gaskell is worse. I would say like in terms of depends on what you call worse, because Scarab decks. I mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but I think the problem with the Scarab decks is that yeah, you can clear it, but how many times are you gonna clear it? Because like I've had like Oricon the Diviner rebuild that deck like 5-6 times, because there's the Spider Nest, there's like the Canoptic Spider, there's like individual Scarabs, there's Tomb World that they use to resurrect Scarabs even. So it's very hard to deal with it, because in the late game he just deals 20. Well, how much is that? Like 3 damage. Yeah, it deals 24 damage from like a full board of Scarabs. Like, I think it's a little bit too much, man. Like, it's not. It's one of those decks that when I play against it, I'm not getting any fun whatsoever, even if I win. Against Gaskell, yeah, sure, it's still annoying, but I'm at least feeling like I'm not gonna get tortured the whole game. Maybe like for somebody else, the feeling is different, but I think I'd rather play against Gaskell, considering
Yeah.
like there's different types of Gaskell decks rather than Scarabs. However, there is one specific Gaskell deck that I would put up at the same level of annoying as Scarabs. Now, let me tell you which one that is. That is literally you remember the deck that I had with Max 4 Energy with my
Yeah.
Gruck? People are playing that with Gaskell right now, and I really want to break my computer when I see that, because I don't. It technically speaking, it should not be working with Gaskell because he doesn't have card draw, but somehow people still make it work, and it really drives you insane because, like, on top of having like infinite grot spam and like stuff like infinite Makari spam, them doing like unbridled carnage, it's like it feels the same as self destruction from Scarabs, right?
Yeah.
So those two things are one that really get on my nerves. But as you mentioned, like there are many different types of Gaskells. I do enjoy playing against the vehicle Gaskell, on the other hand, right? I think those two are probably the meta right now. I do think that Chaos is pretty good against it. A lot of people disagreed when I said that, but I still maintain that Chaos is a good pick into those two matchups. But yeah, I would not call it meta. The meta is definitely Gaskell and Oricon, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Followed by, I would say, Emotech is still pretty good. The Eldar are quite okay. Abaddon is quite okay, and Swarmlord has a tough time against Gaskell, but Like against everything else, he can be terrifying. So yeah, that's what I would. That's what I think, kinda right now.
Yeah, it depends what we mean. Like when we say meta, it depends whether we talk about like what are we seeing, what's being played versus what is the best. Because what my stats are revealing from my tracking on Excel is that the three most common warlords that you're going to see are Gazgul, Galen, and Abaddon. I'm actually not seeing anywhere near as many Imitex as those three. Now, in terms of what's the best and getting the best win rates, I mean, I don't think for a minute that Abaddon's getting the win rates that Gazgul is getting. And also, I can see that that Galen is actually the warlord that I don't know if it's true for everyone else, but it's definitely the one I struggled with the most with Gazgul. Still had a positive win rate against it, but much closer to 50-50, like with Galen. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know why Imatek's not being played more. Tyranids as well. We obviously have Shimetsu, who's been number one a few times this season with his Swarm Lord, but you know that's him, and not many people can make it work. And even he was saying that it's terrible against the orcs. So you've got to play a stupid amount of games and go through all those orc defeats to make them work. Yeah, it just feels a little bit one-dimensional, and again, the ladder system doesn't help, right? Because it incentivizes, that kind of like just play Gazgul, like you were saying. I mean, Gazgul for me, my solution for Gazgul is way simpler. It's just make it one grot. It summons one grot. I think it would be perfect because it is slightly less powerful than Galen and like Nemesis. Those warlords that summon a unit, but that's okay for it to be slightly less powerful because it has a secondary ability, right? And the main power of Gazgul is meant to be buffing an existing board, whereas Galen doesn't have that, and Nemesis
Yeah.
doesn't have that. So for me, the grot thing is a nice solution. But you know, you touched on it earlier that when you've got Makari in hand, you've got this. I talked about in one of my videos that basically you've got this permanent state. You know, last week we were talking about this game's different because you can't kill the Warlord, so the Warlord is a permanent board state. Well, Gazgul has this permanent state. It's not just Gazgul; it's these two grots and Makari. Like,
Can I actually say something? I think I just had a flash of genius in my head. But that would be like what I'm gonna suggest now would mean that they would have to change a legendary card completely, replace it, and probably players who do have the existing one would receive the new one. But this is the idea that I actually had. Lore-wise, we know that Makari is Gaskul's personal banner carrier, right? So it's like the his personal grot, basically. Now, personal, or I believe he's a Gretchen actually, not a grot. But anyway, the main point that I want to emphasize here is the following. Why don't they remove Makari the Grot as a legendary card? Replace it with something else. They can think about it. Is their job. And what if you make Gaskul's ability summon Makari? What do you think about that? If you have no troops, summon Makari the Grot. And that Makari does not go back into your hand. Or maybe instead of like just buffing your troops, which is mostly like not useful unless you have a pretty big board, what if you just give Gaskell the ability to summon this Grot that just gives adjacent units attack? What do you think about that?
I think it's I'd have to think about it more.
Yeah, but it's
but
an idea.
It's a good. It sounds like a really good idea.
You would kill like two problems with one shot. Like you would still
Yeah.
have Gaskell having an interesting ability. It would be lore accurate, and you would instantly deal with the infinite Makari spam as well. However, the problem with that, it would kind of cripple the other orcs a bit. But instead of the Makari, they could think of a new legendary that would be an interesting addition to the orcs.
I think that's where the idea falls down, right? Because
Yeah.
my experience of playing in different CCGs is that whenever the idea involves changing like fundamentally the card, like I think I was saying this to you when we were talking about the Marine 7 drop. What's that one called that summons the 3 Inceptors with flank?
The Angels of Death.
Yeah. Like when people say, "Well, just give them -1 this," it's like, no, but then they're creating another card. Like that works from a coding point of view, from a technical point of view, because it's an existing card. although they have got flanks. But I think there must be something in the design. Flank's different because things like Kronos can give things flank and stuff. So there's probably something there. So that's the giveaway tell. Like if I'm trying to predict what they might do to change a card, that's kind of like one of the giveaways. Like if someone's thinking if it's gonna actually fundamentally change a thing, I usually think companies don't do it. But yeah, no, it's a creative idea, and it would work from a gameplay point of view. Yeah, I think.
I mean, the point is that they just get rid of two problems like with one shot,
exactly.
Right? Because right now, like Infinite Makari is, I know it's funny. Sure, it can be funny, but it's not good for the game. Like stuff like that is not good for the game.
Well, Gazgul's killed a lot of that, right? Like I don't know about you, but I've seen Infinite Makari so much less this season because to get the green off with Gazgul, I mean, I'm still convinced that
you should not have Green Horde on Gazgul, right?
Yeah, and the guy who's top of ladder runs it, but I am still like
skeptical.
I have played a lot. I've played a lot with it this season, and I can tell you the amount of times that card has sat in my hand as a dead card.
Yeah, you know, in general, the infinite combos are usually very toxic. Like, we had two of those in Horus Heresy Legions. Like, one was with Magnus. You could infinitely play Izakar or the Librarian, which was like you would drop the Librarian and it would give the whole board precognition, which means for one turn they were immune to physical attacks. Only stratagems could damage them. And then he would return it to his hand and play again to return it. And he would keep doing this until he had a golden hand and he would just one-shot you. The second one was like there was a Korax burn deck that he would like essentially just burn through his whole deck and then use a card called Void Retreat where he would return a unit into his deck and it would cost 0 and he would draw that unit and then he would, and this card had reflection, it could be reused again and again and again, so he would infinitely draw a unit that dealt like 2 damage to the Warlord or something and then it would just one-shot you for maximum health. So stuff like that is not fun. Yeah, it's
not fun.
It's toxic.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Yeah. All right. So just to kind of like wrap up this week's episode, Ecclesiarch, I was going to ask you for we talked about doing like a little mini segment called kind of like Card of the Week. So the idea here is that we come up with one card of the week. It could be from a decks that we've been playing and experimenting with, or that you think is like pretty standout right now. And then also to come up with almost the opposite side of the coin, which is one card that we think might be quite underplayed or undervalued right now, but perhaps has potential. So let's jump in. So have you got one that comes to mind for like your card of the week this week?
Card of the week, as in like the one that for me specifically was like the best card.
Well, either the best card or like just one you're loving the most. It doesn't have
to
be the best.
Murderous Desires, like not even a question. That is like my card of the week. That's like card of my 2 weeks. Like that has been making my Abaddon deck fun and playable. Like that's like one of my. It needs fixing, by the way. It still does some stupid stuff. Like for example, when you play against the Swarm Lord, you can if it would like lead into a draw. It will choose to do a ranged attack, and then you will lose. So there are some things they need to fix about it. But right now, it has won me like so many games. Like Murderous Desires, underplayed, underappreciated, and for me, like card of the week for sure.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your card of the week?
I think my card of this week comes from my experience when I made the Wraith Knight deck. The Wraith Knight is not the card of the week. It's actually Reclaim the Stars. I think. There's something you talked about, like the feeling of scarabs earlier, and I kind of know what you mean. And I think scarabs are a psychological trick, by the way, because sometimes if you analyze the board state, sorry, slight tangent here. If you analyze the board state of the scarabs, sometimes you realize that for 5 mana they just played a 5/4, but because it's 5-0, because they don't have any range attack. But because it's 5 scarabs, and you just spent last turn killing scarabs, your brain goes, "Oh, there's more scarabs. I can't get rid of them." You're like, well, would you have rather them just played what would you have thought if he just spent 5 mana doing that whole turn? What's the problem? So I think scarabs are a bit of a psychological and emotional trick, and they don't feel good to play against, even though rationally and logically they might seem balanced. I mean, how many times have you just felt like you're just losing the whole game against scarabs, and then you just suddenly win, and you're like, "Oh."
that has been quite a few times. Yeah, that has been.
And and that's your brain like Anyway, but what the point of that little side tangent, my card of the week is Reclaim the Stars. I think Reclaim the Stars has the opposite feeling. So Reclaim the Stars is like this really feel good card. Like it's almost like a quest in the deck that you've got this little mini objective of to pull Reclaim the Stars off. Like you don't pull it off every game, right? And usually when you do pull it off, it's just like you win the game and it's just awesome and it feels so much fun to like get these 5 cards in your hand where you completely cheated the tempo and it's like 5, reduced 5 cost on all these cards. So for me, like Reclaim the Stars is super fun. There's a skill element to it because like you've got to when do you play the Infinity Circuit or do you not? Do you have to try and not get greedy on spending the stones earlier because you're trying to? So you've got to plan ahead. So there's this real kind of like navigation element, and then I think that's why it feels so good when you get it off because you've had to put all that thought in, and then the payoff comes, and you're like, wow, this is super cool. So
plus you gotta consider like how you're drawing cards because it can make you overdraw if you're not careful.
100%. And there's this window, right? Because obviously when overtime kicks in, you start drawing 2 cards. So really, you've kind of got from turn, 7 to... So there's this window of like 3 to 4 turns where you've got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't get it perfect. And I just find it incredibly fun. And by the way, it's quite underplayed as well right now. I think that's a top A tier card and strategy for a win con, but it's slightly underplayed right now. So for me, that's my card of the week. Just feels great. And what about kind of like a card that is sort of underplayed for you, but you think kind of maybe has more potential?
For me, like once again, since like I've been playing Venom Crawler, like since I've been playing Chaos, it would be Venom Crawler because now this would be surprising because a lot of Chaos players play Venom Crawler and I don't right now. But when I look at it on paper, it's a pretty good card. Like you drop a 6, it's a 6 energy 6/6, and it has a pretty good passive. Like you can like if you have marks of like Abaddon's Chosen, you can put like 3 or 4 on those like on it without a problem. I would say one underappreciated card is definitely Venom Crawler, for sure. But you know what the really underappreciated card that I would say is? I would say like this would be like for me because I've been playing Chaos, but I think one of the underappreciated cards for Ultramarines is the Apothecary. I don't remember what his name is, but like that 5 energy 5/5 that heals.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! Like whenever they play this card against me, I feel the panic that I need to destroy it as soon as possible. It's actually quite terrifying, and so it has presence, because you gotta get rid of it or the heals are gonna stack up. So I would say, like, for me, one underappreciated card is the Apothecary, and that includes me. I have not been running that card a lot, but I think I should start because it's pretty cool.
Spoiler alert! I run it in my deck, and I do think it's really good. It's weird though, because do you think Killer Can's good?
Ever since they changed it, it's a little bit better. Like, it could be really good, in what sense? If you... Oh, well, here's another underappreciated card. The Orc Defense card with the vehicles. That's another thing that's underappreciated because you could play some really fun things with that. There's so many underappreciated cards. Devkopta. Another underappreciated card. Like, I love getting, like, a lot of those on the board. It's, like, so funny. It's so funny. Yeah, like the orc vehicles in general are mostly underappreciated because most people just play the Snaz Wagon and the Quick Buggy, and the Grot Tank, obviously. So yeah, I would say like most vehicles with their defense card as well.
I think it's very. The reason I asked about the Killer Can is like, the Apothecary is like 5/5 for 5, and the Killer Can's like 7/7/5 for 5. But for some reason, I feel the health of 5 as a real drawback in the Killer Can, even though it's the same as the Apothecary, and the Killer Can's obviously got tied. Now it has got unstable, and that's
the problem.
That's also a problem. But I don't know. But I agree. I think the Apothecary is definitely.
I think I know the answer to that. The problem is like whenever you play Killer Khan, You expect that if you want any value from that unit, it has to start bashing, right? And like the low health when it wants to bash is a thing because it can be taken out easily. Well, the apothecary, you can just keep it alive and just not do anything, and it'll keep providing value after value after value.
That's
That's the
true.
thing.
And you've got things like what's it called? What's the zero cost spell in the Marines that allows
Which
you
one?
to the one that allows you to codex again.
Yeah, the tactical brilliance, or wait, what is called again?
Tactical
Tactical
insight.
insight. Yeah, insight.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for me, my underappreciated card of the week is Cloud of Smoke.
Oh yeah.
So I have to say, like you'll see in my all 100 games video that one of them was like slightly more mech synergy, and I started with 2 Cloud of Smoke, I removed them, and then I went back to 1, and I found that 1 was perfect because the problem with 2 is that it can end up giving you a clunky hand sometimes. But when I had 1 in the deck, like I have to say, like the value that I got from it was insane every time, and it literally just felt like playing Ultramarines last season. Like if you've got a decent amount of mechs that you can, frequently pull off a Cloud of Smoke, all you need is 1 mech on the board. You drop the Cloud of Smoke, and it will affect 2 units. Yeah, so usually the Warlord, and by the way, blinding the Warlord is pretty good, right? Like if you can have 1 turn where you've got 2-3 units like hitting the Warlord for free and not being hit back, don't underestimate what that can do to the tempo war. But then the other obviously piece is that it just gives you that trade, and it's just like the Ultramarines last season with the Octavia Infiltrator, the 1-drop that used to blind something. That's exactly what Cloud of Smoke's doing, and I have to say, like, it's been super powerful, and the turns where I've landed it, it's been super clutch and just given me a massive, massive advantage on board. So I don't see anyone else running it as well, and I'm just like, why? It's so good.
You know what they should do? Did you used to play this back on Alpha?
No.
Do you know how Nemesis was in Alpha? So he would summon a Necron Warrior, but the Necron Warrior was not 2/3/2. It was 2/2/3. So the health was 3. And I used to play only Nemesis. I did not move to Imotech until Nemesis was nerfed because when you dropped like these 3 health Necron Warriors that could not be taken out, oh my god.
Yeah,
That was
so
like
good.
crazy. The tempo was so nuts on it.
Well, that's why I said to you last week that changing Gazgul so that he gets a Slugger Boy, I don't think is correct because they did the same thing, right? It's the 3 health,
Yeah.
and the enemy Warlord can't take it out.
You know, we have this like one warlord in Horus Heresy Legions, like Zahariel from the Calibanites, and he has the ability to summon a 2/3 Astartes, and the Astartes also has Duplicitus, which cannot be targeted by a warlord until it attacks. So like, it's not disbalanced because Zahariel has only 30 health, so
like
you can like take him out. But Jesus Christ, like it can get so out of hand, like he just spams the board and just then
Can't be attacked by the enemy Warlord.
until it starts acting itself. It's like camouflage.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
like that ability. Do you know what that would be good on? Something like the Apothecary that you were just talking about, where it's got this passive, where it can just sit and be defensive and just keep healing. I think that's an interesting mechanic. That
Yeah.
is really interesting. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, there you go. Cloud of Smoke is my underappreciated one. I think there's some more potential to be had out of that card for sure. All right, dude. I think we have come to the end of another episode of ForgeCast, episode 2 in the bag. And guys, I hope you're really enjoying it. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you like, which segments you enjoy hearing more, and which ones you'd rather skip. That's fine. We're open to feedback. This is a new podcast where we want to kind of make sure we're giving you guys what you want to hear. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Head over to Ecclesiarch's channel if you didn't catch part 1 and you've just listened to this by mistake. You could still go back and listen to part 1 first. It would work fine. So head over there and check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. Guys, we really appreciate all of you. All of you. We appreciate the comments. We love the feedback. It spurs us on. So thank you so much for all your support. And until next time, BJ the Brave, it's out.
And Ecclesiarch out.